Hi everyone, this is Dr. Anamta Rizvi. I hope all my students are online. Let me know in the comment section, guys, if you guys can hear me, see me quickly. Meanwhile, I'll just check if I'm audible, visible. All right, I think, just let me see in the comment section. Great. So I think I'm audible, guys. You guys can hear me? All right, I think. All right. Let's go ahead with the class, guys. Moving ahead. So today's lecture, just taking forward from what I taught last time, that's feminism. I will talk about how all of a sudden ये कोई wave नहीं आया था that one day women wake up and they realize that we need to work on our rights. If we look at the trajectory from the very beginning, we realize that there's very little space that has been given to literature. If we trace the trajectory back, ऐसा नहीं था कि women did not have the talent or they did not have the age, they did not have that capabilities to be a writer, but they were not given that agency. उनके पास ना education था, ना literacy थी, और ना ही means थे, and plus they were bogged down by the responsibilities. Right? So in today's lecture, we are going to talk about women in English literature from Jane Austen to Virginia Woolf. How did that way paved itself to, and of course, Indian English writers as well. So when we talk about the evolution of the female voice, we all know since ever, if we look at the, even if you look at the syllabus of UPSC, अगर हम लोग देखें तो शुरुआत में हमें दिखेगा that be it Shakespeare, be it John Donne or Paradise Lost, that's by Milton, Alexander Pope, or your Wordsworth. If we look at only our own UPSC English literature syllabus, we figure it out where is the female voice, where are female writers, not because they were that purposely इनको exclude किया गया, but actually वो थे ही नहीं. For a long time, women have been seen, have been written, have been understood through the male gaze, through the lens of a male and not a female. A female did not even have the authority to write for herself. So a history of the male gaze. So if we talk about feminist literature, if we talk about the literature that has written, that has been talked about women, that is not written by females, that is written by male people, that is male authors. For centuries, literature was primarily written by men. Okay, meaning women were viewed through a male lens. Either they were idolized as perfect, bilkul flawless, koi flaws nahi, or otherwise they were shown in a very different light. So किसके पास से agency थी? Who had the authority to legitimize different kind of women? And that was definitely with the male authors. Now here is the point. This is the reason that we see later in the centuries that how jab women आए as writers, when they came, then this was the entire scenario changed. They started talking about the concerns that they genuinely face, the grievances that they had. So when we talk about the journey of liberation, ye kab shuru hua? This lecture tracks a massive historical where women actually broke the boundary, they shattered the glass ceiling, they went beyond and they wrote about themselves. Okay, so they reclaimed the narratives. We will examine that how women reclaimed the narratives. They started talking about themselves. So instead of going into a very historical detail, let's talk about the authors that are there in your course. Okay, so I'll start talking about Jane Austen because yes, she's a canonical figure and one of the most famous figures out there. Okay, हर literature student को, non-literature students को भी पता है कि Jane Austen कौन है. Now, why is Jane Austen so important? Because she, apart from being a canonical classical writer, what she did was she brought out the major concern that was there with the females at that time, that they were not able to hold any rights on their property, on their own parents' property. If people did not have a male heir, वो किसी और को चला जाता था, daughters को नहीं pass on होता था. For them, marriage was the only solution to have a financial security. Now, where is this discussed? Very much the novel that is in your course, that is Pride and Prejudice. इसके ऊपर question भी आ चुका है, financial security and Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. There has been a question also in your UPSC means English literature exam. Now, in Austen's era, remember one thing, that middle class women could not freely inherit property. This is very much shown in this entire novel. Now, Austen is often misunderstood as a simple romance writer. No. Over here, that's the catch. She was the one who used sharp irony, wit, and intellect to show what the vulnerability of women, especially when we see in Pride and Prejudice, चाहे वो Charlotte Lucas हो, चाहे वो कोई से भी उसकी sister हो, चाहे Elizabeth खुद भी क्यों ना हो, they all know that unless and until they have marriage, the marriage has to be on the cards. They cannot do without the idea of marriage. Okay, so this is a very important point, guys, because Jane Austen was the first female to talk about this idea. None of the authors, none of the male authors had ever discussed about this at all. So yes, the first author to talk about this was Jane Austen in order to tell what all women go through. और नहीं कि उसने ऐसा नहीं कि उसने कोई बहुत ही crying letters सा कुछ बनाया हो book में, not at all. Very funny, very witty, intellectually charged book it is, but it shows exactly what women want, what women think. Now, when we talk about moving ahead, between Virginia Woolf is 20th century, Jane Austen is 19th century, much before that. Now, between this, there was another, couple of authors, female authors, that have really carved a huge niche for themselves in literature. And few of them, of course, is Bronte sisters. Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, or you have your another, this Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights. So over here, the Bronte sisters and their passion. Charlotte Bronte ka Jane Eyre is also a very strongly written work that talks about a very strong character, and she's a female again, Jane Eyre. Over here, uska jo ek, the self-esteem, the kind of respect that this character holds throughout the work shows the dignity of a woman who had never been looked through that lens. This is the reason Jane Eyre is so, so relevant even today's time. It's not in your UPSC course. I wish it was, but nahi hai course mein, but still it's a very important read. And if you have not read about this work, at least isko padho, uske baare mein samjho what it is. Charlotte Bronte ki aur behan thi, Emily Bronte, and she wrote Wuthering Heights. Okay, so Charlotte Bronte, and Emily Bronte, Anne Bronte, all these really worked very hard in order to establish the position of a woman. I'm sure at that time they must have not envisaged also that they would be considered as canonical writers, that they would be remembered centuries later as well. But it was only their desire, that innate will to express themselves, because there was no female expression at all. Now, George Eliot, when we talk about later, George Eliot, which is very much in your course, The Mill on the Floss, आपके course में है. उनका नाम Mary Ann Evans. So can you believe the irony of it? George Eliot did not write with her name George Eliot. Why? Because she knew that she will not be read by anyone. Female writers ko kitna, they were just not treated like that. Okay, so I'll just take a small break and see over here if you guys are there. All right. So I think, yes, audibility here, just checking that. So when you talk about George Eliot, Mary Ann Evans was her name, and she purposely used George Eliot as a pseudonym. Seems like a man's name. Why did she do that? Because she knew that, if she will call herself Mary Ann Evans, in category mein rakh diya jayega, oh, that's a very, a soft work. Maybe romance likhti honge. Oh, that's not substantial enough. Will not be read in the category of what serious male white authors were writing. Okay, so this was a take for female authors at that time. This is the reason she used. Interestingly, 20th century में J.K. Rowling ने भी ये करके लिखा था. J.K. Rowling का मैंने एक बार interview पढ़ा था, the famous J.K. Rowling author who wrote Harry Potter series. She also said the same thing, that I did not tell my full name, considering that I knew that a lot of male authorship will not, readership will not be mine. So this is very interesting, because female के साथ एक, you can say एक association हो जाता है, एक tag हो जाता है, that maybe they're just writing for this particular audience. That is never with the male authors, by the way. So she used Mary Ann Evans purposely. Okay, so now what was the late Victorian New Woman? By the end of the 1800, writers like Olive Schreiner, Sarah Grant, So many authors were coming up, and yes, there was a high expectation that there would be a larger authorship that is owned by females. Now we are coming, interestingly, to Virginia Woolf, 20th century Virginia Woolf. Why she's important? Because yes, one of the foremost writers who waved the flag of feminism so bright, so high, that she was the one to carve and tie a new path for feminist rights. Now, when we talk about this radical modernism and independent, Virginia Woolf के जितने भी work हैं, they carry fiercely feminist overtones as well as undertones. She declares her work, yes, they are feminist work, चाहे वो Mrs. Dalloway हो, जो आपके कोर्स में है, UPSC English Literature के कोर्स में है, चाहे वो आपका A Room of One's Own, where she's explicitly, categorically stated that the reason that female authors are less is because they do not have a space of their own. They don't have a room of their own. They don't have privacy. They don't have the time. They are bogged down by responsibilities. So she's talked about that. उसमें interestingly उसने एक female उसने एक कैरेक्टर भी बनाया, जूडिथ, जो शेक्सपियर की एक एक फिक्शनल बहन बनाई है, कि उसके पास सेम टैलेंट था, सेम रिसोर्सेज थी, लेकिन वो इसलिए नहीं बन पाई बिकॉज शी वाज अ गर्ल एंड शी वाज ट्रीटेड डिफरेंटली एज कंपेयर टू शेक्सपियर, जो कि इतना बड़ा बन गया. Right, so this is how Virginia Woolf in her literature she's talked about it, and you can see that how from where it started to how it is going on even today's time. So when we look at every writer, be it the 12th century Marjorie Kemp or Julian of Norwich, and then later when we come to Jane Austen, George Eliot, Charlotte Bronte, Anne Bronte, Emily Bronte, every writer of every decade, every century is very important for female authorship to come and have a global stance now. So this is the reason when we talk about Virginia Woolf, we can not talk about her in isolation. We will always refer to those authors that actually created those circumstances, that visibility, that legitimacy, that yes, female authors have their own voices as well. They should not be and cannot only be represented by a male lens. Now, when we talk about the transition, if we talk about also a very important aspect about Indian English writers, we have so many writers, be it Anita Desai, Ruth Prawar Jhabwala, or we have Nayantara Sehgal, or we have Arundhati Roy, Arundhati Subramanyam, or Meena Kandasamy, the poets, the writers who are emerging right now. We have so many authors. If we look about our own writers of early times, be it Akka Mahadevi. So these writers in India also, because our subject is English literature, so we are more aware about Indian English female voices, female authors. But when we talk about our own context, there has been such massive writings by regional female writers in other languages, be it Marathi, Bengali, Urdu, Gujarati, Tamil. So this is the reason that, so this is very important. Why? Because a literature cannot be a space that is only dominated by a particular gender. It needs to have representation from the other gender as well, to deliberate, to have a discourse and discussions about our own concerns, our own issues, our own reality. So this is the reason that it is very important to understand that why female writing is now more prominent as compared to the previous time. Why female writing should be read, because we just cannot, a female cannot be understood or be absorbed into the entire corpus of literature through a male lens. Okay, so guys, with this, I will be coming to this conclusion about that, how this is important. And the modern voices today, Indian women write English, stand at the peak of its evolution, with Banu Mushtaq winning such huge prizes, receiving the acknowledgements. So of course, it's a huge way for us as well. And apart from the female authors across the globe, Indian English female writers are doing a very, very great job in which we can take pride in. So guys, with this, I'm coming to an end of my lecture. The motive was for you all to understand that, how there is diversity in our own syllabus, that is of UPSC English Literature. However, still there's very less representation of women. But whatever it is, we will be discussing it in detail. You have Jane Austen, you have George Eliot, you have Virginia Woolf in your course, which we'll be discussing in detail. So if you are planning to go ahead with UPSC English Literature optional subject, be a part of this course. take my classes every day at 1 p.m. I have my class. The class goes for a considerable long time. Whatever doubts you have, discussions you have, you can have it in detail. Right now it's a YouTube lecture. YouTube lecture mein kya hota hai? It's more of a one way. Jahan pe, I'm so busy, engrossed in teaching ke whatever the replies are, I may reply or I might not reply. But in our paid classes, the discussions are very intense, very heavy, because it is all about developing an analytical assessment critical faculty. It's all about developing an attitude कि हमें एक इस सब्जेक्ट को की कहानी नहीं जाननी है, हमें इसका एनालिसिस जानना है, इसको हमें पढ़ना कैसे है. All right, so once you develop that, the answers come out seamlessly on your paper. All right, so guys, it's a wonderful course that हम लोग ने अभी शुरू किया है. आरंभ UPSC ऑफर है, 50% ऑफ चल रहा है आपके फीस पे. You can use my code AR Live every day. Again, I'm repeating, 1 p.m. I have my classes. If anyone has any other concerns, or you want to ask any queries, description box में link दिया गया है, comment section में link दिया गया है. Go ahead. Ask whatever question you want. Website mein there are my demo lectures, and you guys can go ahead, have a look at my demo lectures, see the way I teach, and I really hope to see all of you in the class. Thank you, everyone.